Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm showing you how to make buttercream and also how to ice 2 cakes, so keep watching. So first I have to make buttercream and I have a whole video on how to do that. Check out my cupcake video. So essentially you cream the butter, mix it well until there's no lumps, add in the icing sugar all at once. You want to make sure you sift it though, and then you just keep whipping it for a few minutes, scraping down every so often so that everything is creamy and smooth like this. Next, you want to cut off the tops of your cake so that they're all nice and flat. And then I'm going to soak it with some milk and then add some buttercream and then add some sprinkles, add the next layer, repeat. Yeah, it's really fast. I'm not that fast actually, it's sped up. Once I get to the top, I'll add extra buttercream and make sure it's overhanging off the edges so I can smooth out on the side, and then use my spatula to clean it all off on the bottom and also on the top. As I'm editing this, I do notice my cake is a little bit slanted here, but I can fix that later. The cake is going to the freezer so it can set for 15 to 20 minutes. On to the next cake. It's a heart-shaped cake, and so I'm also repeating the same thing, cutting off the top and then putting on the cake board, adding icing, repeat, soaking, adding more icing. And once I get to the top, I'll add more buttercream, make sure I overhang on the side a bit, and then I'll add more icing onto the side, smooth it all out, use my scraper so it's a lot easier later to do like the finishing layer of the buttercream. And then now it's going to the freezer again, so that will set for 15 to 20 minutes. Now we're bringing back the first cake out of the freezer so I can do the second coat of the buttercream. So I'll add some on the top and I'll push it off to the edges so that later I can get a really sharp edge. And I turn my spatula vertically so I can add icing onto the sides. And then I'll also use my spatula to clean off the cake board. Here I'm using the scraper to smooth out the sides of the cake, but it's not smooth enough and I need to add a little bit more icing, so this is what I'm doing here. And then again, smoothing it out. So it's the whole process, it's going back and forth. Like once you add some icing, you smooth it out. It's not smooth enough, so I have to add a little bit more icing, and then also have to smooth out the top, but the top edge is not smooth enough to my liking, so I have to add more buttercream, scrape it again and again. And as I'm scraping it, you'll see I'm not actually taking off much icing. And then I'll use a paper towel to clean off the cake board. And the last thing I'll do is pipe on the top with the icing. So I do some on the top and also on the sides. And here's the finished product. Okay, back to the vintage heart cake. It's coming out of the freezer. So this is the crumb coat. Add more icing, doing the same process as last time. However, it's just in a heart shape. It's a little bit more tricky to get it smooth. Over the years, I've had to do quite a bit of the vintage heart cakes because it's still on trend. So since I've done so many, I've developed some of my own techniques on how to ice it, which I'll show you later on in this video. The top edge and the bottom doesn't have to be perfectly smooth when you're making a vintage heart cake, and I'll show you why. So this is my hack to make those droops on the side of the vintage heart cake. So I take a paper cup, a small one, and I just cut it in half like so. The great thing about using a paper cup is that you can manipulate it. You can stretch out the cup a little bit to make it a little bit bigger, or squeeze it to make it a little bit smaller. So I will start at the tip of the heart and work from one side till I get to like the round part of the heart, and then I'll start going on the other side to make sure everything is even. And I'm just gently pressing the cup into the icing just to make some trace marks. And once I get to the center of that cake, I can just make the cup a little bit bigger or smaller. It doesn't have to be perfect. I like to use a small open star tip to do the piping here. And you want to make sure everything is like in one direction. And then on the bottom, I'm using a larger open star tip. So you can see the bottom edge doesn't need to be perfectly smooth because I'm covering it with icing anyways. And then I'm using that same small open star tip to go on the top edges. And I'm using the large open star tip to do the top, and I failed filming there. And then this is like a leaf tip that I'm using. So it's a little bit harder to use. Lastly, I'm just using that same open star tip to just finish that off. And I'm just using that small open star tip to go on the top. And here's the finished product. So what do you think? Leave a comment if you want a full in-depth how to ice a cake with better quality angles and video, okay? And make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already.